Warning of another gas plant's fiasco, NDP leader Andrea Horwath wants the province's fiscal watchdog to tally the cost of incoming Premier Doug Ford's pledge to scrap cap-and-trade. Horwath on Tuesday formally asked Financial Accountability Officer Peter Weltman to determine the price of Ontario withdrawing from the environmental arrangement with Quebec and California. NDP leader Andrea Horwath wants to take a hard look at the cost of doing away with Ontario's cap-and-trade program, as promised by Premier-designate Doug Ford. Renee Johnston, Toronto Star, with Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals' gas plant scandal, Ontarians saw just how much it costs to rip up contracts, she said, referring to the cancelled power plants in Oakville and Mississauga before the 2011 election that could ultimately cost ratepayers $1 billion over 20 years, before Mr. Ford rips up the cap-and-trade deal, and makes billions in credits already bought by Ontario businesses worthless. We need to take a hard look at those costs in this case, not just for the province but the costs to families and businesses. The NDP leader said, the Legislative Assembly and Ontarians deserve a complete picture of how much it will cost to scrap Ontario's cap-and-trade system. Article continued below. Ontario is part of a cap-and-trade accord with Quebec and California that puts a price on carbon. Under the system, businesses have greenhouse gas emission limits, or caps, and those who pollute less can sell or trade credits. That creates an economic incentive to reduce emissions, and over time an industry's overall cap will be lowered in order to cut greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change. It generates about $1.9 billion to the provincial treasury, all of which by law must fund environmental initiatives such as retrofitting buildings, building public transit, and subsidizing electric cars. But Ford, whose progressive Conservative government will be sworn in Friday at Queen's Park, has promised to exit the alliance with Quebec and California in order to reduce gasoline prices by 10 cents a litre. Upon the swearing-in of my new cabinet, at the top of our agenda, the very first item will be to pass an order to cancel the Liberal cap-and-trade carbon tax, the Premier-designate said June 15. The cap-and-trade and carbon tax does nothing for the environment. All it does is hurt small businesses and hurt families, he said. Article continued below. However, $2.9 billion has already been spent on emission credits at auction by Ontario businesses. That means the provincial government could be on the hook to reimburse those companies as well as cover the costs of litigation and any penalties for breaking the contract. Horwath also wants the Financial Accountability Officer to calculate the tab for Ontarians being forced to pay the federal carbon tax. Because the province has a cap-and-trade system, it is not subject to that federal measure, which takes effect next year. Any province that does not have a carbon pricing system that complies with federal standards will have one imposed by the federal government, the NDP leader noted. Ford has earmarked $30 million for lawyers' fees to bankroll a court fight with Ottawa to block the federal government from imposing a carbon tax on the province. Simon Jeffries, a spokesman for the new premier, noted the Tories received a strong mandate from the people of Ontario to scrap the cap-and-trade carbon tax. Scrapping cap-and-trade will save the average Ontarian $285 per year and is the first step in reducing gas prices by 10 cents per litre, said Jeffries. While the NDP want to make gas prices more expensive by increasing the cap-and-trade carbon tax, Doug Ford and the Ontario PCs are committed to putting more money back in people's pockets and making Ontario open for business.